100,000 machines tore themselves apart, and every screen in the building said everything was fine. No bomb, no break-in. The plant wasn't even connected to the internet. Something got in anyway, on a USB stick. And then it did something software had never done before. It started breaking things, physically. Then it got out. 100,000 machines, dozens of countries. It's called Stuxnet, and nobody has ever admitted building it. Natanz is Iran's main uranium enrichment plant, and it is not a building you can hack. It sits under earth and concrete. Every network inside it is cut off from the outside world. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. So whoever built Stuxnet did something stranger. They didn't attack the plant. They attacked the people who were allowed to walk into it. Researchers later traced the very first infections, not the nuclear plant. 5 Iranian engineering firms, contractors that serviced industrial systems, including the country's own centrifuge manufacturer. They were the delivery route. Infect the contractors, then wait for an engineer to carry a laptop or a USB drive through the door at Natanz. The worm didn't need a network. It needed a commute. And once it was inside, the first thing it did was go looking for something very specific. 4. Stuxnet used 4 unknown flaws in Windows. Unknown means unpatched. Nobody could defend against them because nobody knew they were there. One of those is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Criminal crews find one and ration it for years. This burned 4 at once. It was also signed with certificates stolen from 2 real hardware companies. So when Windows asked if it could be trusted, the answer came back yes. A former CIA director later put the cost of building it at $1 to $2 billion. Other researchers think that's far too high. Either way, nobody spends like that to steal credit cards. Stuxnet ignored ordinary computers. It was hunting one specific model of Siemens industrial controller, the rugged little box that tells machinery what to do. Wired one specific way, driving motor controllers from 2 particular manufacturers, running in one particular frequency range. If it didn't find that exact fingerprint, it did nothing at all, which means whoever wrote it knew what was inside that building, down to the part numbers. And when it found it, it took the motors. Now, a centrifuge is a tall metal tube spinning uranium gas at enormous speed, perfectly balanced. Push one past its limits, or stop it too hard, and it tears itself apart. So Stuxnet drove them far past their normal speed, then slammed them almost to a standstill, then back up again, over and over, for weeks. And while it did that, it lied. Before the sabotage started, Stuxnet quietly recorded what a normal day at the plant looked like. The ordinary sensor readings, the steady numbers. Then, during the attack, it played that recording back to the control room. So the engineers watching the screens saw a plant running perfectly. The safety systems that should have shut everything down never fired. As far as they could tell, nothing was wrong. They were watching a recording of a plant that no longer existed. Machines kept failing and nobody could explain it. Iran replaced centrifuges, blamed defective parts, blamed suppliers, investigated its own staff. Roughly 1,000 centrifuges, about 1/10 of the plant, were pulled out and replaced between late 2009 and early 2010. That's an outside estimate from analysts reading nuclear inspection data. But the inspector's own cameras recorded them being carted away. It could have gone on indefinitely. It didn't, because of a mistake. Stuxnet got out. It spread beyond the plant, onto ordinary machines, in ordinary places. And in June 2010, a small antivirus company in Belarus got a call about a client's computers That kept crashing and rebooting. What they pulled out was the most sophisticated malicious code anyone had ever seen. By that September, researchers were tracking around 100,000 infected machines, roughly 60% in Iran, but also Indonesia, India, and the United States. On almost all of them, it did nothing at all. They weren't the Fingerprint, but they could be taken apart. The most advanced weapon ever written was now sitting on hard drives all over the world. So who spends $1 billion to break 1,000 machines in one building? Nobody has ever said. But the story came out anyway, in pieces. First, Iran. In November 2010, its president admitted it publicly. Software installed in electronic equipment, he said, had damaged several centrifuges. Enough, in his words, to disable them on a limited basis. Then, in 2012, the New York Times reported that Stuxnet came out of a classified program, codenamed Olympic Games, begun in 2006. The sourcing, current and former officials, who would not go on the record. Stuxnet is widely attributed to the United States and Israel. 15 years later, neither government has ever admitted it. And there's one more piece. It only surfaced 2 years ago. In January 2024, a Dutch newspaper published a 2-year investigation. According to that reporting, the code was carried into Natanz by a Dutch engineer working out of Dubai, recruited years earlier by Dutch intelligence. He got inside by installing equipment there. About 2 weeks after the attack, he died in a motorcycle crash. This part is contested. Dutch intelligence has never confirmed it. Researchers dispute how the code was delivered, and it isn't clear he knew what he was carrying. But if it's true, look at what this took. 4 unknown Windows flaws, 2 stolen certificates, possibly $1 billion. And in the end, it may still have come down to one person walking through a door. Colonial Pipeline, MGM, Change Healthcare. Every story on this channel comes back to the same place. The technology was never the weak point. Before Stuxnet, malicious code stole things, deleted things, held files hostage. It stayed inside the computer. Stuxnet was the first widely known case of code reaching out of the digital world and physically destroying machinery. In July 2025, 15 years after it was found, a congressional hearing called it the world's first digital weapon. And what those lawmakers were actually asking is the uncomfortable part. Do the power grids, the water plants, and the factories run on the same kind of controller Stuxnet went after? They do. 1,000 machines tore themselves apart, and every screen said everything was fine. The frightening part was never that it worked. It's that somebody proved it could be done, in public, and everyone was watching. If this is the kind of story you want more of, hit subscribe. One real cyber attack, broken down properly, every week. Next Tuesday, 5 years after Stuxnet, someone used the same idea to switch off the lights on nearly 250,000 people. 2 days before Christmas,